Oh, hey! Did you miss me? Because I missed you. I'm so glad to be back. It has been a long time, much longer than I originally anticipated it would be. I took like a 3-week break at the end of August and plan to come back at the beginning of September. My mental health, my body, my soul, my spirit had other plans, but we are back now. It is the fall season, my favorite season, especially for reading. And today I wanted to kind of just play a little catch up with you, talk about all the books that I have read in the month of September, what I plan to read in the month of October, because I am back in my like semi TBR, more like mood reading hopefuls era. So I'm gonna take you along on that. First, we need a little bit of coffee. It may be fall, but I'm still in my iced drink time. Because do I ever really leave that time? No, maybe in the depths of winter, but for now, iced drink it is. But let's get started on the first book that I read in September, which was A Novel Love Story by Ashley Poston. Now, I have read all of Ashley Poston's other book, The Dead Romantics and The 7 Year Slip, and I liked both of those books more than I liked this book. I did not dislike this book, but it just didn't like captivate me in the same way that the other two did. I thought I would like this book more because it is like a bookish book. It has like book themes. The main male character owns a bookstore. The main female character is like an avid reader. So I was like, this is gonna be right up my alley. And it was up my alley, but not far as up my alley as I thought it would be, if that makes any sense and doesn't sound as gross as it did coming out of my mouth. But I would give this a solid like 3.5 stars if I were a star rating kind of gal. It's like a good read, and if you like Ashley Poston, then this like follows her formula of writing. So this is a decent read. The next thing that I read was The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst. I was in a like cozy fantasy mood, and this absolutely delivered on the cozy fantasy front. It very much reminded me of Can't Spell Treason Without Tea. And then the next one in that series comes out. We'll talk about that a little bit later though. But this is like cozy fantasy. There's like talking plants, which I actually found really cute. I usually don't like a talking non-creature, I guess, you know, like talking inanimate objects. But I love the talking plant in this. I thought it was so well done. It is like a cozy romantasy, I guess. Though like the romance is a decent part of it. It's not like a huge part of it. So this was quite fun. I would give this probably 4 stars. Again, if I were a star rating gal, 4 stars on this one. Next one, Just Playing House by Farrah Heron. I really love the premise of this. So this story is about a woman who has the BRCA gene, which if you don't know is like a genetic indicator of breast and cervical cancer. And if you have it, you are like much more likely to get breast and or cervical cancer at some point in your life. And both her mom and her aunt had breast cancer, I believe, and her aunt passed away from the breast cancer. And so she has decided, and at the age of like 28 maybe, I think she's in her late 20s, to have a double mastectomy. And she, you know, going through the surgery will need a lot of support, but unfortunately her friends aren't going to be able to support her as much as she expected, and neither will her family, or she doesn't really want her family to, for like various familial reasons. And turns out that her like prom date from high school, who she had a little crush on and who apparently had a little crush on her, is now back in her life because he is a burgeoning celebrity and she is a stylist. And so he offers to take care of her while she's recovering. So it is their story of kind of reuniting. It's also a story of grief. It's a story of, you know, what does it mean when you have to make really difficult life choices? And then how do you like heal from that process, both physically and mentally and emotionally? It is very, very sweet. And I really appreciated that a like romance story touched on something that I think is really important, which is like women's healthcare. I will say that I thought it was a little dragged out. I felt like it was a little slow in the middle. And I kept being like, why don't y'all just like freaking like get together already? You know, like it's one of those stories where it's like, it'll never work. Like our lives are too different. And like, sometimes I get a little tired of that because it's like, I think I'm one of those like softies who like love can conquer all. And so I'm like, let love conquer all. But in the end, I really enjoyed this book. I think I would give it 3.5 stars. Yeah, solid 3.5. A good read, especially if you really like your romance with a touch more of like, I don't know, seriousness maybe. Not like a rom-com, more like a serious romance. Good read. Okay, then what I read next was A Dawn of Onyx and A Promise of Peridot, which is the Sacred Stones series by Kate Golden, I believe. I read these on my iPad and they were so good. I kind of started dipping my toe into more like romantasy, more like pure fantasy, since we, you know, slowly were starting to get into fall, and these just delivered. I really enjoyed this series. The next one actually comes out in a couple of days, I think on October 8th. So hopefully after you're watching this, if I can get this up when I want to get this up, but like time will tell on that. But it was really, really good. I really enjoyed the like story. I thought the romance was really great. It kind of reminds me a little bit of ACOTAR in like the romance type, like the grumpy, not quite sunshine, but like grumpy, I don't know, like learning, if that makes any sense. Like I feel like in ACOTAR and in the Sacred Stone series, the female main character is like learning a lot about a world that she didn't really know existed. And then there's like the grumpy, more like all-knowing male main character. And of course they fall in love. So I kind of like that dynamic quite a bit. And that is like a big part of this series. I just thought it was really well done. So I would give that one 4 stars. And we'll lump the series together because I read book 1 and book 2. So we're gonna lump that together. We're also gonna lump together the next series by Sabaa Tahir. I don't know if this series has a name, but it starts with an ember in the ashes. And I read the first 2 and like a half books of the, like half of the 3rd book in October, but I've since finished the series. So I'm just gonna lump it all together into one and review the whole thing, primarily because the series now exists like as one giant book in my head and I can no longer tease apart what happened in book 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we're just gonna talk about it all together. It was great. I was so invested in these characters, so invested in this story. It's like one of those fantasies that's very prophecy driven. So there's a lot of like riddles and rhymes and words and like people giving prophecies and you're like, that makes absolutely no sense. And then in like 350 pages, makes a lot of sense. So that was really fun. I will say, I think this series could have been 3 books instead of 4. I feel like the 3rd, like the tail end of the 2nd and like the beginning and middle of the 3rd, I'm like, did I need that? Maybe not. Or it could have been just like truncated. The whole story could have been truncated into 3 books. But I also say that and like I would finish each book and be like, okay, I'm gonna take a break and read something else, and then like picked up the next book immediately. So it keeps you entertained, that's for sure. I also think this is one of the most diverse fantasy stories that I've ever read. Like it really replicates what a world looks like, both in like skin color and life experience, and there's tribes people, there's like mariners who are more like city folk and like elite kind of people, there's like highly trained assassins there, you know, like it really is just such a representation, I think, of like actual humanity instead of like a lot of fantasy that I think delves into like mythical creatures more. This was a fantasy that was like very grounded in humanity with like a layer of mysticism kind of layered on top of it, which I thought was really cool. I would highly recommend this series. Like, depending on the book, it's like a 4 to 4.5 stars for me. And I really was like captivated by how it ended. Like, I was gasping, I was like sad, I was happy. Like, it really made me feel every emotion. So highly recommend that one. All right, let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk about my reads for October, or what I hope to read. So I did have finishing book number 3 and 4 from an Ember in the Ashes series on my list. So those two knocked them out already. So that leaves 7 more books that I want to try to get to this month. The first is Quicksilver by Kelly Hart. This one I've been seeing all over social media. I've seen a couple other booktubers talk about it. I think it got really popular maybe a couple of months ago. And like people were like, this is going to be the next big book of the year. And I'm like, always late to the game. But I do join the game usually eventually. And so I'm joining the game now. I'm reading Quicksilver now. This is a fantasy romance. I don't know too much about it. I know that there's fae and I think there's like alchemy in it as well. The series is called Fae and Alchemy, so like I'm making a lot of assumptions here, but I'm pretty sure those assumptions are correct. So I'm pretty excited about this one because it's like pretty well renowned. It is a little bit long. She's almost 700 pages, so this will probably be like the longest book I've certainly read this year. Maybe ever. Maybe ever. We'll see. So there's that one. Then I mentioned the Sacred Stone series by Kate Golden. The second one comes out October 8th, I believe. So definitely want to get that one and finish out that series, kind of see what happens there. Also, next in a series, I mentioned Can't Spell Treason Without Tea. That is from the Tomes and Tea series. The second in that series, A Pirate's Life for Tea, is being like re-released. I think it came out a couple years ago maybe, or last year. And it has since been re-released, maybe under Trad Publishing. I don't know if it was indie first and now it's Trad Publishing, but it does have a new cover. And that was released October 1st, I believe. And I love this author on social media. The big thing surrounding them is that they got a lot of like negative feedback that there were too many lesbians in the first book. And so I know in the dedication to this book, she's like, for everyone who said there were too many lesbians in the first book, I doubled the number of lesbians in this book. So I just love that like sass and just like approach to negative comments. It's like, I'm going to do what I'm going to do and what I believe in. And like, you can get on board or you can hop off, and like, either way, it doesn't bother me. So really excited for that one. That one's certainly on the list, like a cozy romantasy fantasy, which I love in the fall. So we're definitely going to do that. The other ones are not fantasy, romance. Although this first one is a little bit of a fantasy. It has witches in it. It's called Rewitched by Lucy Jane Wood. I've also been seeing this one around quite a bit. This involves a person who works at a bookstore, and y'all know I love bookish books. So we're going to try again. Since, what was it? A Novel Love Story didn't quite hit the way I wanted it to hit last month. We're going to try another bookish book this month and hope that this one is both fall feels and like that fantasy, cozy fantasy that I am looking for with a bookish theme. And then I'm going to read You Again by Kate Goldbeck. This one, I think, came out last year around the fall time, maybe. But I'll put the cover on the screen, and it's like, it screams fall. Like, it is just the book that needs to be read in the fall. So I've kind of been saving it for the next fall season that comes, and now is the time. So we're gonna read that. That one is, I think people compare it to When Harry Met Sally, which I've never seen. I'm not a big like rom-com movie gal. I like just got into rom-com books. So maybe one day I'll get into rom-com movies, but we'll see. And then I also have The Cautious Traveler's Guide to the Wastelands. I am pretty sure I saw Emmy Rossum read this. She's a booktuber, booktok girly, and it sounded really interesting. So that one is about like a train that goes from, I think, somewhere in Europe to somewhere in Asia. Let's look so I can get you the actual right story. It's set in the 19th century, and it travels the marvelous wastelands, a terrain of terrible miracles that lies between Beijing and Moscow. And so like something has happened on this train, and now the train is traveling again with the same crew, and like mysterious things just keep happening on the train. So it sounds pretty interesting. Unlike anything that I think I've ever read, it is a fantasy, like a fiction fantasy book. So I think it might toe that line between like fantasy and contemporary fiction a little bit, at least from what I've heard. So I thought I would try something new this month. So that's on the list. And then last but not least, Red Rising by Pierce Brown. This is the first in a series, and I've been really enjoying the series lately. So I thought, coming off of An Ember in the Ashes, I would start a new fantasy series, since I'm going to be finishing the Sacred Stone series with the last book that comes out this month. And yeah, I guess between that and Quicksilver, I'm starting 2 new series, Red Rising. But this book has been out for like 10 years. I've seen it all over the place. It's like touted as like a really great, just kind of like fantasy read with like a little bit of sci-fi. It's also dystopian. So this is going to be a different type of read for me too, because I don't read sci-fi really. I don't think I've like ever picked up anything that I think even touches the sci-fi realm. So we'll see. Maybe Ender's Game might be a little bit of science fiction-y, but it's been like probably 10 years plus since I've read Ender's Game. So we're gonna dip my toe in that just a little bit to see. And those are the 7, kind of 9 books that I want to read in October. I am really excited about this fall season. I'm also excited to be back on social media, excited to be back on booktube. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed your time here, and I'll see you in the next one.